Welcome back to the Perfect Ride series. I'm your host, Mitch Hackelman, and today we're here to talk about the Rad Expand 5 Plus. This is the next edition of Rad's folding bike called the Rad Expand 5, and in my opinion, they probably should have called it the Rad Expand 6 because all the changes they have here really put this thing into a different category. So in this video, we're really going to talk about this bike and seeing if it matches with your use cases. So if you are watching this video, you probably have come across some information online. Maybe you got to test ride one at one of their dealerships. Heck, maybe even came into Power On, tested one over here. But in this video, we are going to go through the use case. We're going to talk about price point, all the stuff that you should figure out if this is going to be a good fit for you. So let's go ahead and jump into that. But before we get into today's video, I did want to say that Rad did send us this bike for free, but they are not paying for this video. All these opinions are my own. And really, it's not really about my opinion. We're going to really talk about the different types of things you could use on this bike, and then you would know if, it's going to fit your needs. So let's jump into it. The first thing we're going to chat about is price point. The Rad Expand 5 Plus is going for $20.99 right now, so we can just call it $2,100. Is that in your budget? I don't know. I'm just making this video, talking to a camera. So really, it's up to you to decide if that is in your budget. Now, Rad does also offer financing. So if you go through them, you can use a firm and pay for that. Or if you come to Power on E-Bikes, I'm sure there's other e-bike stores out there where they do offer financing. So if that's something that would kind of fit your cash flow a little bit better, you could break this up into, 6, 9, 12-month payments, something like that. If it is in your budget, the next thing to look at is going to be what can you use this bike for? So if you're looking at it, it does look like it is a little bit more rugged. Looks like it can handle a little bit of off-roading stuff. But if you are looking at this compared to, say, the Rad Rover 6, you're probably interested in the folding capabilities. So that's something we're going to talk about quite a bit in this video, is the fact that it does fold. So that's kind of one of the biggest pros here, in my opinion. You can fold this thing down, put it into the back of an SUV, maybe a larger trunk. I transported this morning in my Subaru Outback. Now I got a lot of space back there, but I didn't have to put the seats down to get it to go in there. Folded up to a package, shoved it in the back of what is my trunk space, and that worked out pretty well. So if you got a 2020 Subaru Outback, this will work here pretty well. The next thing we would look at for use case, after we talked about the fact that this is a folding bike, it's going to take up a smaller footprint, is going to be motor capacity, top speed, things like that. You gotta be sure that it's gonna do what you need it to do. So right here in the rear, we've got a 350 watt motor. Now, caveat to that is, it doesn't feel like a 350 watt motor at all. In fact, it feels like it's really more on par with at least a 500 watt, if not a 750, which is kind of strange to me. There is something on Rad's website about how it's less than 750 watts, but here it really does feel closer to a 500 watt motor at least. You get a lot of torque kind of built into the mechanics of a 20-inch wheel. So that is something to, make note of. Now, as far as top speed goes, it is a class 2 bike. So top speed of 20 miles per hour, throttle or pedal assist. Now you can put this and use it as a class 1 bike. Very easy to do, to pop into the menu, switch classes here, which I do like. So if somebody's like, well, I just want a class 1 bike, or you're in a spot where you have to have a class 1 bike, it is very simple to go in there, change the settings, and then boom, you've got a class 1 bike. Now with a class 1 bike, top speed's still 20 miles per hour, but the throttle's not gonna work, and pedal assist will take you up to that 20 miles per hour. The next thing to look at is going to be the weight of this bike. Especially if you're gonna be folding it up, you wanna make sure that you're comfortable with that weight, and the weight here is 73.39 pounds for the total bike with the battery included, and then the battery itself weighs 9.62 pounds. So you take the battery out, it's going to take you down to around 64 pounds. At the end of the day, this is not a ultra feather light type of bike, so you'd have to know if you're comfortable moving that weight around. The next thing to chat about would be some of the ways that you could augment this to do whatever it is you need it to do. So you can get a front basket for it. It does mount up here in the front, where a front basket should go. And then also here in the rear, we've got this rear rack. It's rated for 59.5 pounds and has a nice spot to put in one of Rad's rear baskets, one of their cargo basket type thing. Slap that on the back, then you could carry a bunch of stuff back here. So it really depends on what you need to do. If you want to carry some stuff up front, you can. You want to get the basket in the back, you want to get both of those, you can do that and you just add those as extra accessories. The next thing to chat about is going to be range. How far will the Rad Expand 5 take you? And we're going to mainly be looking at the battery here. The battery we have here is a 48 volt, 14.4 amp hour or 691 watt hour battery. Now, Rad does claim this is a 60 plus mile bike. However, for most folks, I think 45 to 55 is probably more of a realistic range. If there was somebody who was light and they were going around pedal assist level 1 and they were pedaling the whole time, they could probably get close to that 60-mile range. But for most folks who are going to do a mix of pedaling and throttling and they want to go around at speed, 45 to 55 is probably a little bit more of a realistic range for most folks. Now, one quick thing I'll throw in here is the battery is UL certified. So this is UL 2271 certified. So if you're looking at, some bikes on Amazon or some bikes in different places and you're like, I think I need to find something that's, been tested, it's going to be safer, the UL certified battery is definitely the route that you want to go. And again, 2271 is that UL certification for batteries. Now, the Rad batteries have something that's a little bit different, kind of a step above maybe some of the other people. They've got this safe shield technology, so all the cells are individually wrapped in a way so if one of those cells does fail, it doesn't spread to the whole thing and it doesn't wind up like some crazy fireworks display, as I'm sure you've seen in some of the YouTube videos or Facebook videos, whatever, of these batteries exploding and going crazy. You won't have to worry about that with the safe shield technology here. Now, the next thing to look at is where can you take the Rad Expand 5? And we're going to look at that in two different ways. The first thing, we're going to look at the tires, and the second thing we're going to look at is the suspension. So as far as tires go, we do have a little bit more of an off-road tread. So this is something that can handle, some decently loose gravel roads, light dirt paths, stuff that you would kind of come across if you were at a state park or maybe, behind some of the neighborhoods, depending on where you live. The fact that we have these knobs right along the side here means that once you get into that off-road terrain, you are going to get a little bit more grip, and that's kind of what you look at. The difference between a street tire and an off-road ready tire is a street tire would be flat across the whole thing. Gives you a really good grip when you're on flat surfaces, but as soon as you get off-road, you don't have anything to dig into the terrain. So that's what's nice about having these knobs here on the side. Now, these are a fat tire, so this is a 20 by 4-inch tire, and a couple of nice little safety things we have. We do have the sidewall reflective stripes here, which you might touch base on later in the safety section. But all in all, these are pretty decent tires and really should handle kind of whatever terrain you need to handle. The next thing to look at is suspension. The only place that we do have suspension here is going to be up here in the front. Our front forks have 50 millimeters of travel, and what you can do is you have a preload adjustment on this side and a lock-on adjustment on this side. So if you lock them out, they don't go anywhere. You unlock it, and you start to get some compression here with the front suspension. So having front suspension on here means that once you do kind of take it off the concrete or the path or the paved trail, it is going to be a little bit of a smoother ride than if you didn't have any suspension up front. So we talked about some of the stuff you could use it for, what sort of terrains it could handle, how far you could go. The next thing to chat about is going to be, how does this thing actually feel to ride? So for that, I'm going to send it out to myself for the ride test. Hey guys, we're out here for the ride test portion on the Rad Expand 5 Plus. Let's go ahead and talk about gearing, ride feel, all that jazz. So to turn the bike on, press and hold this power button over here. I'm gonna bring our display to life, and we're gonna do it in pedal assist level 1. Go ahead and just get started here. So in pedal assist level 1, we're kind of going along. Now you're like, oh, he's going 4 miles an hour. Well, this is a torque sensor bike, so as we put more pressure on it, it is going to go a little bit faster. So I'm cruising along. I feel like we got some good gearing here. And we're hitting 10 miles an hour pretty good. Now we are in 7th gear over here. We've got our Shimano SIS index shifter. Shift that down to about 4, maybe 5. 5 feels like a good 10 mile an hour gear here. And so we're going about 10, 11%, barely pulling any wattage. As you can see over here, we got about kind of like 30 to 78, kind of depending. We'll go ahead and put it into pedal assist level 12, 2, 3. And again, it's torque sensor. As we press down, it is going to go that much faster. But the nice thing about pedal assist bikes with a torque sensor in there is you don't have to go super fast. So like right now, I'm actually going to switch hands again, and we're going to go into 7th gear, flip a Yui. Now we are going along about 10 miles an hour, and I'm barely putting any pressure down as far as pedaling. Like I'm, decent cadence. I'm not putting that much force down, but as soon as we start to put some force down in it, pulls up to those 750 watts, and then we'll go 20 miles an hour. Now 20 miles an hour, pretty decent cadence as far as pedaling goes. Now, if this had 8 gears in it, or maybe a larger chainring in the front, we might have a little bit of a better, pedal cadence there, but not too shabby. Let's go ahead and flip a UE here, and we'll do throttle only. Again, pull up to the 750 watts there, and I'll take us up to 20 miles per hour. So that's the thing that I'm kind of confused about, is it says it's a 350 watt motor, does not feel like a 350 watt motor at all. I mean, it really does feel like at least a 500 watt, if not, some of the other 750s are on these 20 by 4 inch wheelbases. Not wheelbase, but the, the wheel set, if you will. So again, 20 miles per hour. And then we got those motor cutoff inhibitors. So if I pull this a little bit, kills power to the motor. I need to stop a little bit quicker than that though. So as far as handling goes, feels like it is, pretty maneuverable, being able to kind of go left, kind of go right, but still feel stable because we got that 4-inch tire that we're on. Go ahead and hit it over here. Yeah, in my opinion, the gearing's pretty close. I probably would have got an extra gear or a larger chain ring in the front. I feel like that would have been a little bit more of a better pedal cadence, but really it is not too bad. Now, I'm a big fan of like the BMX-ish style bars here, so I feel like I've got some pretty good control. Again, my only complaint really so far is we don't have locking grips, which I don't think in my timeline, I've already mentioned it, but in your timeline, I might not have talked about it yet, but having some locking grips here would be nice. They're not incredibly easy to move, but they do have a little bit of movement to it, and I'd prefer to see a locking mechanism here. But yeah, really ride feel, we got those 50 millimeters of travel up front with the suspension. That feels pretty nice. We got some cops, going to do whatever cops do, and we are cruising. Now, as far as we talked about this being sort of like a camping bike, look at me here. We're going to go do some off-roading. That feels pretty good. Pretty easy pedaling. Again, having the fat tires in general makes it a little bit smoother, a little bit more comfortable. And then the fact that we've got some suspension up there, I think helps out quite a bit. So all in all, it is a pretty good ride experience. I think that covers most of the stuff that we try to cover on the ride feel section. So I'm gonna send it back to myself for the rest of the review. The next thing to look at is going to be the display. So I've got the display turned on here, and we're gonna walk through some of the things that it shows us. So right over here in the top left, it's gonna show us how much watts we're using. Right now we're not using any watts because we're staying still, but as we use this motor, we are gonna start pulling some watts there. So that's gonna show you, how many watts you're pulling, which is a pretty nice feature in my opinion. It'll show us our odometer right here. So we got 4 miles on it. And then we've got our battery percentage across the top. Now this is something you can switch in the main menu, and we'll get to the menu here in just a minute. I've got mine set on battery percentage, but you can also put this on predictive mileage, which I don't know how accurate it is, but it is pretty interesting. We've got the light indicator over there that I just took away. We turn the lights on, we got a little light indicator here. This is gonna show us how fast we're going, and then these are our pedal assist levels, which we're gonna adjust this way. Over here, we got our plus and minus. We can go up to 5, back down to 0. Now, if you press the menu button, which is at the bottom, actually, let me just zoom out here. So if we press this menu button right here, it's gonna show us our trip time, trip distance, and our class level. So you can kind of get some extra information there. But if you press and hold this button, then we're gonna get into our settings menu. So we can clear our trip, we can adjust our class, and all you gotta do is press this kind of our enter button here, and we can go between class 1 and class 2, and then we change our unit from imperial to metric, but this is America, so we're gonna keep it on imperial. Now for the range, you can actually set this so there's the battery percentage, and there's remaining range is kind of the other one. We can adjust our brightness, but if we go back to our main menu here, now you're gonna see it says 64 mile range here in pedal level 1, and as we adjust it, it's gonna go down, okay, boom. So it's a little bit of a predictive range there. I don't know how accurate that is, but it is interesting. But I like the battery percentage, and I can kind of make that distinction for myself. But if you like the remaining range, you can swap that right there. Now, something that's kind of an interesting feature is here at the bottom of the display, we do have a USB-C port. So right down here, look at that, zoom in, we got our USB-C port right there. So if you want to charge some of your devices, you can do that right here in the display. So I think that is pretty interesting. And that's pretty much it for the display. So let's go ahead and talk about something else. The next thing to chat about is going to be safety. How safe is the Rad Expand 5 Plus? And we're going to talk about a couple of different things. The first thing we talk about is the brakes. You're going those class 2 speeds, 20 miles per hour. Is it going to be able to stop you? Now, we do have hydraulic brakes, which is nice, left and right. And then we've got 180 millimeter discs in the front and the rear. I think I said 180 millimeter. I don't know why I said it that way, but 180 millimeter. So we've got hydraulic brakes. Our levers are up here in the front, and we've got 180 millimeter discs at the front and the rear. So plenty of stopping power here. 180 millimeters is pretty much the standard these days. So it's the standard, right? And they met that standard, which is pretty nice. Now, the other thing that's kind of an extra thing, and most e-bikes have this, but some don't, is the fact that we've got motor cutoff cables here. So if you look down at the hydraulic levers, you'll notice there's 2 lines coming out of it. One is for your hydraulic fluid. That's how you brake. The other one is an electronic signal that when you actually brake, actually as soon as you sort of bring the levers back a little bit, it's going to cut off power to the motor. So if you're ever in a situation where you don't like what's going on, before you even get to like the mechanical like stopping of the bike, it's going to cut off power to the motor, which is nice. So if you are braking, it's not going to be one of those things where you're fighting against the motor or anything like that. So definitely a safety thing. Again, pretty standard, pretty common on most e-bikes, but you know, it's nice to mention it that it does come here. Now, we already talked about the sidewall reflective stripes on the tires, which are, you know, a big plus in my opinion. The other thing to mention here is we do have turn signals. So these 2 buttons here in the middle are for our turn signals. Turn signal to the left, turn signal to the right, press it again to turn it off. So that's nice because you are going to be letting people know what way you're turning, and that's going to be with our rear light in the back. The other thing about the brakes is we do have braking integration. So when we pull this lever, the backlight's going to flash, letting people know that we're coming to a stop. So again, kind of some safety things there. The next thing to mention is that we talked about how the battery is UL 2271 certified, but the whole bike itself is UL 2849 certified, meaning that the whole product met UL safety certification standards, which is pretty nice. I don't know why I put a twang on there, but I did, and that's just, sometimes it happens, okay? I live in Texas, and happens. So it is nice to know that Rad sent this bike off, third-party verification that this thing is safe, meets all those standards. So us as the consumers, it is nice to know that you know, they verified that this is going to be a fairly safe product for us. The next thing to chat about is going to be geometry. So how long is this bike? How wide is this bike? And what is the standard height? So the total length here is 70 inches from the tip of the front tire to the back of the rear fender, because that's kind of the full length there. 70 inches. As far as width goes, here at the handlebars, it's gonna be 27 inches from tip to tip. And our step through height, which is really not too bad, is about 17 inches. If you bring your foot right over the folding joint, maybe about 17 inches. So those are the measurements here. As I say, I'm about to fall over on this thing. The next measurements to chat about are all about you, and that is going to be mainly the minimum and maximum saddle heights, so let's talk about those. The minimum saddle height is 30.5 inches from the top of the saddle to the floor, and 25 inches from the saddle to the pedal at its lowest point. The maximum saddle height is 38.5 inches from the top of the saddle to the floor, and 33.5 inches from the top of the saddle to the pedal at its lowest point. The next dimensions to cover are going to be the folded dimensions. And those are going to be 41 inches long, 25 inches wide, and 29 inches tall. So for a fat tire bike, it does fold up to be a fairly compact folding e-bike here. The next thing to chat about is going to be extras. So what are some of the things that, you know, I'd classify as being an extra feature on the bike? We did mention the USB charging cable at the bottom of the display when we talked about that, but it does come stock with integrated front and rear lights, which safety thing, extra thing, either way, it is a little bit more of a safety item. So we can control that with the pad over here in the front. We just press and hold that plus button or the up. That's the same thing we're gonna use to, you know, raise our level of pedal assist. And I'll turn on the front light and the rear light. And like I mentioned, when we brake, it is gonna show that we are coming to a stop. So those are pretty nice extra features. We do have these fenders. So we've got a big fender in the front and a fender in the rear. Now these are plastic fenders. If you guys have watched any of my videos that I've ever put out, you will know that I am personally a fan of the thicker, better plastic fenders, and that's exactly what we have here. So that is pretty nice. The other thing I would say would be an extra is the fact that we do have this pretty beefy rear rack. Again, rated for 59.5 pounds. So super easy to throw something on the back, cargo basket, pannier bags, truck bag, whatever. So it does give us a couple of carrying options there. Other than that, that might be really all I classify as extras, except for maybe, you know, we got folding pedals here. You fold those in. So that's kind of interesting. If you're somebody that likes to fold stuff, you can do that. Other than that, it really is more or less feature complete, I would say, right? We got the fenders, we got the rack, we got integrated lights, hydraulic brakes. The only complaint that I have, and again, if you've seen in my videos, you'll know this is usually a complaint of mine, is we don't have locking grips here. So the grips do move a little bit, like when you twist them, and as it gets hotter out here, these are gonna get a little bit looser, a little bit more malleable, and then they're gonna twist a little bit more. So as far as upgrades that I see on this bike, I mean, really the only upgrade is probably getting some locking grips and maybe swapping out the shifter. We do have this 7-speed Shimano SIS index shifter on here. Swapping that out for something that's more of like a rapid fire shifter might make sense. You know, as I've sort of done a lot of these videos, become less and less of a fan of these. And the main reason is if you're going, and it kind of makes sense when you think about it, when you go to shift, you got to bring your thumb way up here and you really have to take your hand off the grip. Like you're losing a lot of your grip when you move your thumb. But with those trigger shifters, you kind of get to keep some pressure here, and you can just do that down here underneath where the half twist throttle is. So those would be maybe some possible upgrades. Other than that, there's really not a lot to complain about here. Next, let's answer 3 questions from the internet. The first question is, do you have to hold the throttle at all time? I have carpal tunnel syndrome, so this won't work. Now on this one, we do have the option of using the throttle or pedaling using pedal assist. There's not a cruise feature on here. You know, went through the menu, saw if there was, you know, a way to turn that on. I didn't see one, so it's not like you could hold it for a little bit, hit a certain speed and then let it go, and it'll keep going all by itself. But you could pedal it here. You don't have to use the throttle if you don't want to. Question number 2, is the Rad Expand 5 Plus as comfortable to ride as the Radster Trail? So, funny story about this one, I had a customer in here this morning at Power on Ebikes, and she rode a few bikes, but the one she was going back and forth on was the Radster Trail and the Big Sur. So she rode the Radster Trail. She's like, oh, I really like to feel this. You know, it's very comfortable for her. She hopped on this, and she's like, no, it's not as comfortable. So could be personal preference, but it's kind of funny that that was the question, and you know, I had that experience this morning. So according to her, no, it's not as comfortable to ride as the Radster Trail. And to be fair, the Radster Trail is a pretty sweet bike. We'll be having our Perfect Ride Series review of that coming out in a little bit. So I would say that it kind of depends on who you are. You know, if I had to give my opinion, because it's kind of an opinion-based thing, I would say the Radster Trail is probably a little bit more comfortable than this. Although at the same time, they really are different bikes for different use cases. So not sure if it's fair to compare, but it was a good question I found, so I thought we would answer that here today. Question number 3. The torque sensor is cool, but does it have a cruise setting when you want? The answer is no. It seems like a lot of these were based around, does it have cruise control? And the answer is no, it doesn't. So that may be an option in the future. It could be a firmware update, probably not. So for most people who are looking for something that has a cruise function, I don't think they're gonna find it here on the Rad Expand 5 Plus. Again, future versions of the bike, maybe, firmware update, maybe, but most likely it's gonna be a no. So if you are watching this video and you're finding that the Rad Expand 5 is checking off a lot of those boxes for you, how can you get one? Well, Rad Power Bikes has quite a few options for you. You can go to radpowerbikes.com and order one straight from their site. You can go to any of their Rad showrooms around the country, or you can go to one of their retail partners and pick it up from there. So if you're in Houston, you can head on over to Power on Ebikes. We are a Rad dealer now as of like about a month ago. So we are starting to carry some more of the Rad bikes. If you want to come out and test ride this exact model, you can do that. We are open Wednesday through Sunday. So just a small, quick pitch there for you. So you could do that, right? You could go to the showroom, you could buy it online, go to a local retail partner, and that pretty much covers all the ways that you could purchase an e-bike. You know, you could find one on Facebook Marketplace or whatever, but if you want the warranty, you want all the good stuff, those are your 3 options. So there you go. Now at Power on Ebikes, when somebody comes in, they find a bike, usually the last question they have is, oh yeah, what's the warranty? What's the after sales service like? Now, Rad Power Bikes does offer a 2-year limited warranty, which covers most of the stuff that you'd want it to cover, minus consumables, which would be brake pads, tires, tubes, things like that. Other than that, they do a pretty good job of covering their bikes. Now, as far as how you can get that service done, if you need something fixed, you need something repaired, you can either contact them. They do phone, they do email, kind of like everybody else. But you can also go to any of their repair partners. So if you go to their website, there is a place where you can find, you know, dealers, partners, whatever they call it. And you click on there, and in the left-hand side, it'll show you, you know, kind of what partner they are. So if there's a little like wrench on there, they're a service center. If there's a little guy riding, it means that it's a test ride facility. And then if there's a little shop front icon on there, it means they are a retail partner and have bikes in store. Now, most of those places who are retail, kind of depends, I guess. We're maybe a little bit unique. We do retail, we do test rides, and we do repair. So again, if you're in Houston, you can bring it to Power and Ebikes. But if you want to find a spot where you can bring the bike in, somebody who manages and repairs the Rad bikes, you can find that on their website, or just call around to your local bike shops and, you know, see if they'll work on it for you. So guys, that is going to do it for our Perfect Ride Series review on the Rad Expand 5 Plus. If you guys have any questions for us, please let us know down in the comments, especially if you are looking at this bike, comparing it with something else, and maybe you're a little bit more confused than you were before. Let us know down in the comments, and we'll see if we can help you down there, and we'll catch you on the next one.